Hi viewers, this is my reading diary, and today we'll be reading The Adventures of Captain Underpants Part 2 by Dav Pilkey. Chapter 5. One day, very, very soon. Remember when I said that George and Harold's silly streak got them into big trouble once? Well, this is the story of how that happened, and how some huge pranks and a little blackmail turned their principal into the coolest superhero of all time. It was the day of the big football game between the Horowitz knuckleheads and the Steubenville stinkbugs. The stands were packed with fans. The cheerleaders ran onto the fields and shook their pom-poms over their heads. A fine black dust drifted out their pom-poms and settled all around them. "Give me a K," shouted the cheerleaders. "K," repeated the fans. "Give me an N," shouted the cheerleaders. "N," repeated the fans. "Give me an achoo," sneezed the cheerleaders. Achoo, repeated the fans. Achoo, achoo, achoo. The cheerleaders sneezed and sneezed and sneezed some more. They couldn't stop sneezing. "Hey," shouted a fan in the stands. "Someone sprinkled black pepper into the cheerleaders' pom-poms." "I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. The cheerleaders stumbled off the field, sneezing and dripping with mucus, as the marching band took their places. But when the band began to play, steady streams of bubbles began blowing out their instruments. Bubbles were everywhere. Up and down the field, the marching band slipped and slid, leaving behind a thick trail of wet, bubbly foam. "Hey!" shouted a fan in the stands. "Somebody poured bubble bath into the marching band's instruments. I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. Soon the football teams took the pitch. The knuckleheads kicked the ball. Up it went the ball. Higher and higher it went. The ball sailed into the clouds and kept right on going until nobody could see it anymore. "Hey!" shouted a fan in the stands. "Somebody filled the game ball with helium. I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. But the missing ball didn't take any difference, because at that moment the knuckleheads were rolling around the field, scratching and itching like crazy. "Hey!" shouted the coach. "Somebody replace our deep heating muscle rub lotion for Mr. Prankster's extra scratchy itching cream." "We wonder who did that?" shouted the fans in the stands. The whole afternoon went on much the same way, with people shouting everything from "Hey, somebody put sea monkeys in the lemonade" to "Hey, somebody glued all the bathroom doors shut." Before long, most of the fans in the stands had left. The big game had been forfeited, and everyone in the entire school was miserable. Everyone, that is, except for two giggling boys crouching in the shadows behind the stands. "Those were our best pranks yet," laughed Harold. "Yep," chuckled George. "They'll be hard to top, that's for sure." "I just hope we don't get busted for this," said Harold. "Don't worry," said George. "We covered our tracks really well. There's no way we'll get busted." Chapter 6. Busted. The next day at school, an announcement came over the loudspeakers. "George Beard and Harold Hutchins, please report to Principal Krupp's office at once." "Uh-oh," said Harold. "I don't like the sound of that." "Don't worry," said George. "They can't prove anything." George and Harold entered Principal Krupp's office and sat down on the chairs in front of his desk. The two boys had been in his office together countless times before, but this time was different. Mr. Krupp was smiling. As long as George and Harold had known Mr. Krupp, they had never ever seen him smile. Mr. Krupp knew something. "I didn't see you boys at the big game yesterday," said Mr. Krupp. No," said George. "We weren't feeling well." Yeah," Harold stammered nervously. "Well, we went home." "Oh, that's too bad," said Principal Krupp. "You boys missed a good game." George and Harold quickly glanced at each other, gulped, and tried hard not to look guilty. "Luckily for you, I have a videotape of the whole thing," Mr. Krupp said. He turned on the television in the corner and pressed the play button on the VCR. A black and white image appeared on the TV screen. It was an overhead shot of George and Harold sprinkling pepper into the cheerleaders' pom-poms. Next came a shot of George and Harold pouring liquid bubble bath into the marching band's instruments. How do you like the pre-game show? Asked Mr. Crop with a devilish grin. George eyed the television screen in horror. He couldn't answer. Harold's eyes were glued to the floor. He couldn't look, literally. The tape went on, revealing all of George and Harold's behind-the-scenes antics. By now, both boys were eyeing the floor, squirming nervously and dripping with sweat. Mr. Crop turned off the TV. You know, he said, ever since you boys came to this school, it's been one prank after another. First you put dissected frogs in the salad at the parent-teacher banquet. Then you made it snow in the cafeteria. Then you rigged all the intercoms so they played Weird Al Yankovic's songs full blast for 6 hours straight. For 4 long years you two have been running amok in the school. And I've never been able to prove anything until now. Scrap held the videotape in his hand. I took the liberty of installing tiny video surveillance cameras all around school. I knew I'd catch you two in the act one day. I just didn't know it would be so easy. To be continued again. So that was the end of chapter 6 and part 2 of this video and book. So like and subscribe for part 3. But in the meantime, peace out. Again!